Attention American poker players! Do you want to legally cash out your poker winnings to PayPal? Then head to globalpoker.com and see why it's the fastest growing site for US players. That's globalpoker.com.
Poker Stories is an audio series that features casual interviews with some of the game's best players and personalities. Each episode highlights a well-known figure in the poker world and dives deep into their favorite tales both on and off the felt.
Hello and welcome back to Poker Stories, brought to you by Card Player, the Poker Authority, and hosted by me, Julio Rodriguez. We got a fun episode this week with Tony Dunst, who you might recognize as part of the broadcast team for the World Poker Tour. Well, you may not have heard, but Tony recently got a promotion. Mike Sexton, who has been the voice of the WPT since 2002, has decided to move on to become chairman at PartyPoker. And as a result, Tony will be taking over for him in the role of full-time commentator alongside Vince Van Patten. In fact, I believe his debut comes later this week at the WPT Choctaw event. Although Tony is concentrating more on his broadcast career at the moment, he does have a solid poker resume with a WSOP bracelet and a WPT title of his own. This interview is full of great stories, and Tony isn't shy about sharing both the ups and the downs. So enough intro, here's my conversation with Tony Dunst. Tony, how you doing?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing good. We have the newly promoted Tony Dunst.
Yes, that's right.
How you feeling these days?
Well, I'm feeling great. Very excited about upcoming season of World Poker Tour. As you said, I have a new position there, and so that's going to kick off pretty soon. In a way, I already did here at the Aria where we're recording, and it's just like I said, a very exciting time to be working for the World Poker Tour. We're expanding all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I'd see a day when Mike Sexton would leave the, but I can't think of anybody better position to take over.
Thank you. But I agree with that. I mean, WPT and Mike Sexton were always one and the same. They were always synonymous. And so, even before this happened, I didn't really even give it that much consideration because I was just like, Mike Sexton and WPT, that's how things work. Yeah, so.
Yeah, we'll get into Mike, but I got to give it to the guy because he was stone-faced. I mean, when I interviewed him a few months ago, it didn't come up at all. So it either happened suddenly or mum was the word for him on that one.
Yeah, I'm just not sure.
All right, so George Anthony Dunst, right?
Yes, that's right.
Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I grew up in Madison. Was born there, yes.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about Madison and what a young Tony was up to.
Madison's a nice place to grow up. It's a college town, a couple 100,000 people, type of place where people leave their doors unlocked at night, or certainly did when I was growing up. And a very politically active city, a place that has a long history of political protest and involvement at the university. And
home to Phil Hellmuth.
Home of Phil Hellmuth. Actually, when I started playing playing poker in high school, and like early college, I would sort of bounce around in these little pub games and like home games. And every now and then, those were games that Phil had stopped by or played in previous years. Coming up or like with this same kind of crowd-ish of people, and so it was always funny to see that carryover.
Did you get to hear any crazy stories of his time in Madison?
So there was always one story about somebody laying him out over a pool table, or maybe that was what Sam Grizzle did years later, and they got conflated or something like that. But yeah, there was nothing that really springs out.
I like to think in my mind that Phil was like this really humble kid from Madison, and then the switch was activated when he won the main event, when he beat Johnny Chan.
That is not my interpretation.
He's always been this confident?
Yeah, I think he's I think Phil has probably always been and always will be that way.
All right, so you're in Madison. You're big into video games, huh?
Yeah, I was pretty big into video games. I started playing like EverQuest back in the day, which was one of those multiplayer online games that you can just play for hours and hours. They called it Evercrack, and
it consumed my college roommate.
You played that one? Oh, he played that one.
He played that one for sure.
Okay.
That was right around the Leroy Jenkins time.
Yeah, that was, I think, World of Warcraft, and I didn't get full blown into that one, but played it a little bit. And just I loved the early years of playing video games online. So like when online poker came along, it was just like, yeah, sure, like why not? It wasn't a strange or foreign thing. Yeah.
So to you treated it like a video game early on?
No, I treated it like gambling, and I read a bunch of books about gambling and trying to understand those games. But it just had the feel, the sheen of a video game. It made perfect sense to anybody who grew up playing them and grew up exchanging money online as if it were real currency.
That's right, and you used to sell like video game stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like you would accumulate whatever it is in the game you accumulate and then sell it online?
Exactly. Like in EverQuest, there was currency and there were items, and I kind of figured out what these items were worth and turned myself into like a wheeler and dealer, and then, I would accumulate those items within the game and then sell them for real money on eBay.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't know, let me think about this. It's 18 years ago or something, and at that time, the idea of selling things that only existed in a virtual world for real money was like very foreign and strange. My parents thought I was going to get scammed or something, and now like everybody on their phone is just clicking for more coins or more gold or more whatever and
buying
whatever
the
app
latest emoji or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems so obvious and natural now, but at the time it was like, whoa, I don't know, these things don't even exist in reality.
And yet you're getting actual money for it.
Yeah.
So you're getting paid to play video games essentially. Poker comes along. You mentioned you were fascinated with gambling pretty early on?
Yeah, a lot of movies came out around that time with characters and protagonists who were gamblers in some capacity. It looked like a very glamorous world, and I started reading a whole bunch of books, and that included both like strategy and how to think about the game, but also stories about the game and that world and universe. And I found it very intriguing, very alluring.
Yeah, like even before the Moneymaker boom, you were doing this.
Yeah. I was playing online probably for about a year before Moneymaker won the World Series, and was very into poker maybe for a year or two prior to all that. And so when he did win, I think I was following along. I want to say it was like really early June, because the World Series used to be earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So it was like late May or early June that they would run the main event. And I think I might have been in like class and was reading online that he had done this, and was like, wow, what a name,
You must have been like 17.
17, 18, yeah, right around in there.
You were into blackjack early on?
I was into blackjack early on. Back in those days, you could bonus whore, as they called it, and make these deposits that would get like doubled or tripled on these new casinos. And if you knew how to play good basic strategy of blackjack, you could clear that bonus before you were expected to lose the amount that you had gained via the bonus, and then cash out the profit. So I did a little bit of that. I taught myself to count cards at a very mediocre level, at like 17 or something. But there's nothing you can do with count carding when you're 17 years old. Like, good fucking luck going to a casino.
It's not like you had the MIT team behind you.
No, not at all. So once poker came along, I was like, oh, this makes way more sense. All my friends in like study hall and on weekends already want to play this. It was crazy micro stakes, but I was still making more money than I could at a minimum wage job around town. Yeah.
Did you have any bad jobs as a teenager?
I had numerous jobs. I mean, some of them were like crappy in the sense that I was I worked at Subway and made people sandwiches and everything. But like my friends
were an
weren't
artist.
there.
Let's
I was
give
a
you some
sandwich
credit.
artist.
You went to Subway University, got a degree.
But the job I had that I really hated was working as a shoe salesman at Finish Line in the mall, because just the managers were so demeaning and just kind of like so controlling, and there was no commission, and it was just sort of like it was sort of soul sucking in a way.
Sucking.
I was just kind of like, it was just, you're always being told what to do, but you didn't really have any incentive to do better.
Yeah.
So why the hell should I try?
Yeah.
And that really gave me pause and made me think like, well, I guess when I go forward in life, I should do something that not only like benefits me in a more immediate way for my work and my efforts, but also gives me like more of a satisfaction than just being told what to do does.
Yeah. Plus, you don't have to deal with feet.
Yeah, no feet. Ugh.
I'm picturing like an Al Bundy attitude. He was a famous shoe salesman.
Right, I remember Al Bundy. I'm that old.
All right, so you're playing online poker, but you're not crazy. You're still gonna go to college, right?
Yeah, I went to college.
University of Wisconsin.
Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee.
Yeah. University of Wisconsin is way more fun. That's the distinction there.
Well, that's weird. You were born in Milwaukee, and then you went to then you
grew up
moved
in
to Madison.
And then I went to school back in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, but my family was split between those two places.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, easy to visit home 90 minutes away and everything. And also, like as I mentioned, University of Wisconsin really is a super fun place to go out as a college student, and I had friends that would go there, so I would just go back on the weekends. And Milwaukee wasn't that bad or anything. It just it didn't have the campus life and that campus energy like Madison
famous.
does. Yeah. So that was fine, and I was a pretty bad college student, really. I was pretty lazy.
What was the plan? What did you go in wanting to do with it?
I went into college wanting to play poker. I was already pretty set on that. Yeah.
So you didn't have you weren't like, I'll go be a doctor, and if that doesn't work out, I'll play cards.
No, I knew for sure I wanted to be a professional poker player, and was telling teachers that in senior year of high school. And
I can't imagine that got a good response.
Typically, no. But I want to say the math teacher thought oh, that's not crazy, because he understood statistics and odds and things like that, and if you spoke about it in that way, he probably understood that you're not drawing dead,
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of other teachers have thought you need to have a safer career. I mean, people who understand numbers generally understand risk, whereas most people are so risk averse. The idea that you would do something or pursue something that could lead to a very ugly failure, or just even a failure in general, is too scary.
Yeah. So you've always been a risk taker.
I guess so. Yeah.
What about parents? What did they think?
They were equally scared and concerned. Particularly my mom. She just thought that maybe I was developing a problem gambling. And this was kind of a fair assumption, I think, for parents of our generation to make, because prior to our generation, the vast majority of people who were gamblers were losers, because they were probably playing horses or house edge games or sports betting or whatever it was. So the vast majority of people's experience with gamblers prior to this is as people who are delusioned in some way about their chances of winning, and who are in fact losing at all of these various games. And so when someone comes along and in their teenage years and says, "Don't worry, I know everybody loses at these gambling things, but I've got this game where it's all gonna work out," it's pretty fair for them to be skeptical and concerned. So they stayed that way for years.
Okay, so you're in college,
Mm-hmm.
and then the opportunity to well, I guess no. You won the online package to the Aussie Millions.
Yeah, I won that sophomore year.
So what's that like as somebody who had you been a world traveler at that point?
I had been to a resort on a Caribbean island, and I didn't leave the resort. So no, I had not really traveled, and
you were
won
the
this
kid from
package.
the Midwest.
Yeah, I was just some kid from the Midwest who'd basically not really left the region of the Midwest except for a trip to Florida or Caribbean. And needed to figure out getting myself from basically Chicago to Australia, and staying in this hotel and gambling in these live events. And
You were 19 or 20?
Yeah, I was 19 when I won the package, 20 when I went there, and still didn't really have very much experience even stepping in casinos. Around Wisconsin and Illinois, I think it was generally 21. We could play in these sort of bar games, tournaments, or charity events at 18, 19, and that was fine. But actually stepping into a casino itself, even at 20, was an exciting proposition.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Florida at the time, and our casinos weren't really casinos at the time. So.
Yeah, did you guys have those boats? You had to go out 45
we had the boats,
minutes or something.
Yeah, they could go a few miles offshore, and then you could gamble. But other than that, I think card games were limited to $1, $2 bets per bet.
Yeah.
So not much action.
Right.
So you're in Australia. You won the package. You cash in that event.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got all the confidence in the world.
Yeah.
What's next?
I was Australia is the best place ever. I should do a study abroad here, and then I could hang out at the casino more, and I'd already be of age, and I could still play online poker. And so I used the profits from that trip towards paying for a flight and the additional tuition it would cost and expenses to do travel abroad my junior year in Melbourne. And basically became a full-time poker player in Crown Casino, and went to half my classes or something.
Yeah.
And really just kind of went down the rabbit hole of being a professional gambler and online poker player. And
were you in over your head, or did it go well, or?
Let's see. At first I made some money playing limit poker. And then I gradually kind of lost most of all of it. I don't remember what on. Probably on some limit poker, on some tournaments, and just like not having bankroll management. A friend staked me, and I played some more tournaments and started grinding cash and worked out back and roll. And then I started getting involved in the 2+2 community. I remember it was around that time I asked somebody who was like younger than me, and also very, very like precocious and good at poker. Why are you this good this young? You know, like how did this happen? He was like, go read the strategy on the 2+2 forums. So I followed his advice and became immersed in this community that was like very. It's a little bit tough to imagine in those days, but back then people were like really happy to just give out all the strategy advice for free. And it was a little bit of a language you had to learn in order to work with 2+2, but once you were in it, it was kind of very useful. And this was like many of the best of your competition looking at the hands that you played and being like, oh, you should have done this differently. And that's so invaluable coming up. So yeah, after that I started to play online and understand bankroll management and get more and more connected to these guys on 2+2, and they taught me a lot of important things about poker.
You moved to China after you finished school?
Yeah,
Wait, did you finish school?
No, I didn't finish school. I dropped out of school with like a year left. And
so after Australia, then,
yeah.
basically.
Yeah, I accidentally stayed too long in Australia on my student visa. And so I was given a 3-year ban, and then I had to like go through this process to get it rescinded, but I had to spend that time outside the country.
Wait, a 3-year ban from what?
Because I was on a 6-month student visa, and when I was 20 years old, I didn't realize like I was enrolled for 12 months worth of classes, but I had to renew the visa. But that was like not the kind of thing that I thought about as a second time traveler.
Yeah.
I just was, oh man, I'm here for a year. They know. And
but where did you get the 3-year ban from? Coming back to Australia?
No. Basically,
coming back to the States.
What I'm saying is like, so the first 6 months I was living in Australia, everything was fine, and then in the second semester, I'm still going to school, but I had not renewed my visa, a new 6-month visa. So I ended up staying illegally for 5 months before their immigration department contacted me. And was like, yeah, you screwed up here. And I was like, no, I didn't. And they're like, oh, yes, you did. You need to come down to our office and speak to us. And so when I was at the office, they're like, yeah, oh, you overstayed your visa by like 5 months. It's not the end of the world, but we're going to ban you for 3 years. So don't come back to Australia. And I was like planning to come back in 2 weeks. I'd already booked a flight and everything. And, so yeah, that was a whole mess. And so while I was getting that sorted out via a lawyer, I was living in Shanghai, China with my ex-girlfriend, and we were both playing online poker. And I was just kind of waiting.
What was that experience like living in China?
That was tricky for me because we weren't in the heart of Shanghai. We were like a solid hour outside the like central city area, and that meant that there wasn't really anybody around that could speak English, and I couldn't have friends or relationships with people outside of my ex-girlfriend. So it was like being in a very distant foreign place with only one person to talk to and online poker. So I was consumed with online poker, and actually the people that I ended up talking to all the time were the guys that I met on 2+2 on Skype. We would just have these big Skype chats. And
any of them still around?
All of them still around, really.
That's
almost all. I mean, like Mike McDonald, Lucky Chewy, Gobble Boy back in those days. He still plays cash, but he's not around the tournament scene as much anymore.
Yeah.
Trying to think, there was definitely other, and just other guys who've come in and out of poker or grind cash, but yeah, like that was around that time that I especially got to know Mike and Andrew, Lucky Chewy.
Yeah. The Mike McDonald started backing you when he was 17?
Yeah. As a result of those conversations, Mike knew how I thought about poker, and I don't know, I guess just kind of trusted me. And so he and this other guy, Stephen Paul Ambrose, who won the first or second ever PCA for a ton of money, and they both had done really well early in their poker careers, decided, I think our crew of 2+2 poker players / group chat is going to be better than average at the World Series of Poker this summer, so we're going to put together a stable, go ahead and reach out to us. So I asked Mike about this, thinking maybe he'll back me in a couple of events or something. And him and Steve were like, yeah, you're clear to play whatever you want for the summer. Just check with us first. We'll have this extended makeup deal, and then we can probably work together going forward if we just kind of like what you're doing and what we see.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of off and running.
And this is a kid who couldn't even step foot legally in a casino.
Correct, yeah. He was 17. We still hadn't met. I met Stephen Paul Ambrose, maybe a few months after we made this deal. I don't know if I'd even like really spoke to him. It was sort of like Mike told me on Skype, like, hey, you're gonna meet Steve at the Rio. Him and Mike Watson got locked out of their hotel. Oh right, he's the one backing you for half of this or something, like something along those lines. I was sort of vaguely aware.
Poker.
Yeah. No, I knew that he existed in the deal prior to that, but I still had never spoke or messaged him before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when did you start traveling the circuit then?
I guess I started traveling the circuit regularly around 2007. I mean, I was playing in some of those like Aussie Millions and things like that as far back as 2006. But I was playing a lot of stuff in the U.S. and in the Pacific region as far back as 2007. And, was like taking international trips just for poker or for packages pretty regularly by 2008. So it was...
They had that big Bellagio Cup win.
Yeah. Yeah, that was... Right, the following summer. That cleared up all the losses of the previous year.
That's how poker works.
That's how poker works, yeah. And it got to continue traveling towards. It's a little tricky when you're living in Australia, as I was during that time, because you're such a massive flight from everywhere.
Yeah.
So
usually your flight's as much as the buy-in.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so a lot of the poker that I played was in Asia and the Pacific region. And that was kind of cool because poker was just first starting to like grow and evolve there and take place really. And I remember being there the first night they opened like the Hong Kong Poker Club, and it was like the first legal legit like place to play poker in all of Hong Kong as these poker rooms were opening up and just first running in Macau and stuff. So I got to see some of those early years there, and that was fun.
The vibe I got from you when I first met you was like a kid from the Chicago streets or something. Always wear a suit.
Yeah.
City boy. So was that like a persona you put on, or did that just you grow into that type of...
Not really. My dad would dress up for work. He was a lawyer, and just kind of like clothes and fashion and stuff. And he would give me like books and magazines growing up. So that was fairly natural. And then when I saw movies or like
you were always
magazines,
a sartorialist.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a really good look. And I took a bunch of psychology classes in like high school and in college, and they would tell you all these things about how, with like the halo effect, for example, when people are dressed in a formal way or wearing a uniform or all these kind of things, there are all these really positive assumptions made about them. Like basically, whenever you wear a suit, you have like the ability to just like act like you work there right now. Like, and nobody ever really questions it. It's just one of those things where they don't ever question what they see, or like very few people do. So I don't know. It's an easier way to move through the world when people just immediately make positive assumptions about you, or think I'm not in a place to question what that person's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
When I see a suit, I go, "Oh, that guy can afford a suit."
Yeah.
That automatically puts him in a new category.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Like you don't. There are all kinds of different positive assumptions made.
You still rocking a suit almost every day, or I've seen you
not every day
down for poker tournaments sometimes.
Man, first of all, I'm pretty sure it's hotter in Las Vegas these summers than it was 10 years ago. I don't feel like looking at a chart right now and getting depressed, but I'm pretty sure that's a thing. And
I heard the jury's still out on
global warming.
Global warming.
That's yeah. Yeah, that's a sure bet. The world is getting warmer. That is a sure bet. But anyway, yeah, wearing suits is tough in Vegas in summer. And I do it for work a lot now, and I do it for a moderate amount of tournaments. But it's nice to be able to be a little more nondescript at times. And also I feel like, my friends dress fairly casual, and if you're very formal all the time, it can make other people uncomfortable just because there's such contrast. So I think leaving suits for environments or times that they're more appropriate for is probably the best option.
Yeah, I'm glad we're both in our pajamas right now. Makes it way more comfortable.
Yeah.
Black Friday, let's talk about the pain and suffering you went through on Black Friday, because... people got hurt by Black Friday, but it seemed like you really got hurt by Black Friday.
Financially, I sure did. I went from, maybe having, like, ballpark $100K liquid to, like, I don't know, less than $5K or something. Like, so much of it was just locked up online, and then I also lost one of my accounts to a hacking, like, 2 weeks prior to Black Friday. So financially, it was a total disaster for me. And then it just, like, it does such a number on your confidence in terms of your decision making and leaving yourself exposed like that, and then also your confidence in your peers and the industry around you, because it turns out so many of them were lying about the services that they could provide and how safe your money was, and it was just so bleak looking for a moment in terms of poker's future. So I wasn't ready to jump off a building or anything on April 16th. I was like, man, we're going to have to rebuild. This really sucks. But a lot of people
and you also makeup too, and you don't have
I was
the
in tons of
bankroll
makeup.
to make it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was already buried in makeup, but if you have your own money, it doesn't really matter that much. You're like, hey, backer, I'm going to keep playing for you, and if you don't run out of money, I should eventually bank a tournament or something, and we'll be fine, and I've got enough money to pay my expenses to go to these tournaments and blah, blah, blah.
How deep were you?
At the time Black Friday hit, I don't remember the exact figures, but it would have been in the 200-ish K area, because I know that before I cleared that makeup, that figure, it got above 3. It was probably 330, 340 at its peak, maybe a little less than that. I don't really remember, but and then in classic tournament fashion, it was a hole that I accumulated over a couple of years and a figure I cleared over a few months.
Yeah.
Do
you play better when you feel that weight on you, or is it worse? I mean, I know some people, when their back's against the wall, they always seem to come up with one. You know what I mean? I could name some names, but it might be a little rude.
Yeah, I feel like I probably play the same. And especially now that I've just played so many tournaments over the years, I just kind of feel like I'm always... I'm not really thinking about the money too much. I'm just thinking about what's the decision I have to make here. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, right around Black Friday, you're also hired to do the Raw Deal on World Poker Tour. I read that you were not in love with poker at the time.
Yeah, it was tricky because I got the job 6 months prior to Black Friday, and I was like, yeah, everything's great. And then the rug is pulled out from under us, and all of a sudden I'm pretty busto and pretty depressed about poker, and so having to do the Raw Deal and portray myself as an authority on something that I all of a sudden did not feel as enthusiastic about was initially tricky.
Plus, you're also talking to big winners every week.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
It doesn't feel great when you're talking to the latest millionaire.
Or being the one who is entrusted with criticizing their play when I can't tell myself that my own poker career has been a success at this point.
Yeah.
So that was conflicting, but also it was nice to have a job and a career where I didn't have to gamble to earn a living. Sorry, the cleaning people are here.
It's all good. We have editors. Well, maybe we'll leave this in. Maybe she'll be entertaining.
We wait about 30 minutes or something like that.
I'll come back.
Thanks so much.
You handle that well.
Yeah. Right, so
You're doing the Raw Deal.
Tricky to be doing the Raw Deal and feel like I was not necessarily in a position to criticize others' play when my career was not going that well.
Do you think you would have left poker if you didn't have the Raw Deal?
No, because there wasn't anywhere for a 25-year-old with no job experience to go. And I was always pretty good about just spending all my time on something. So the way I rebuilt my bankroll was just literally starting at 2.5 and then 5.10 and then 10.20, working off of just a small cash stake. Not even a stake, just a small cash figure. I was like, okay, I'm just going to build this back up until I have decent spending money again, and then I can occasionally take a little piece in a tournament here and there. And I knew that I would do that at some stage. I knew I was capable of obsessing enough over things that even though starting at 2.5 is very unpleasant for somebody who has had 100K liquid and was playing whatever tournaments he wanted online, I also knew that it's not that long of doing that, of committing yourself to it before you're comfortable again.
Yeah.
And that's an advantage that poker has that most jobs simply cannot offer. It's not okay, if I work extra hard at my job for the next 3 months, then I'll have a nice nest egg and I can chill for a little bit. That's not most jobs. You don't get more money for working just tons harder.
Yeah. Oh, I know that too.
Yes.
I was just nodding in solemn agreement.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you bink a WPT. You get to win a tournament for the company you work for.
Yeah, I mean, that was sweet, but that was when I was in makeup, so I saw $0 of that. So I was like, yeah, I won a tournament. Here you go, Mike. Here's some of the money I lost back.
$145,000. This was in the Caribbean?
Yeah, in the Caribbean.
And but still, it's got to be nice to have your name on the trophy.
It's really, yeah. I mean, it's great. I got my name in the WPT Champions Cup. Made it appear as though hiring me was a reasonable decision when I can actually win the damn events that they're running. Plus, it was a televised event, and it had a very stylish look to the final table because it was filmed outside. There was like this airport in the background. It was the middle of the day, so it just ended up making for good TV, I think, which is important when the people you're trying to become a part of their viewing experience with is the audience. Like, you know, at the end of the day, if the poker community is like, LOL, you won a tournament that you don't even see any dollars from, like, who gives a fuck? Yeah, that's true, but my job with the World Poker Tour is not necessarily to earn the respect of, you know, the most hardcore poker players. It's to earn the respect of the audience. And so if they see me winning these tournaments, that's obviously very, very valuable in terms of...
Plus, 145, maybe you didn't see any of it, but that means you get to see the next 145.
Exactly. Cleared like half of it or something, and it also provided a 15K seat to the WPT Championship a few months later, and I hit for like 450 or something.
453. Finished third.
Yeah, so I hit for 450 there, and then bang, problem solved, you know? Backer made whole, plus he gets profit, I get profit, I'm on my own, and he will probably, you know, he has and will continue to work with me because he knows that if something goes wrong, I'll do my best to try and clear any accumulated losses, or he knows just from speaking hands with me over the years that I'm probably not punting off sacks too regularly. So, yeah, you know, in the end, being willing to just stick it out and play a ton of poker worked out for me.
When did the relationship with PartyPoker come into play?
Around the time that I won WPT Caribbean, they had asked me to wear a patch there, and then as they began moving into New Jersey in the following year, 18-ish months, it became more important for them to have a relationship or a sponsorship with some American players, and I was included in that. And then as the direction and management over at PartyPoker changed and they became more of an internationally focused company, they continued to sort of welcome myself and Mike as Americans into the fold and were, you know, useful as ambassadors.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Aussie Millions, because that's a crazy story.
Yeah, it is a good story.
So tell me, you go down to Aussie Millions with the intention of playing, or
so
just
basically
side events, or
I hadn't been to Australia for 6 years at that point.
No issues at the border?
No, it was all good. But I hadn't been for 5 or 6 years because I was typically doing WPT events in January, and certainly during the lean years, I wasn't going to spend like thousands of dollars on a trip to Australia. But you know, now things have been good. But also at the time I got to Australia, I'd been going through like a live poker downswing. I had cashed one tournament in the previous year. I had pretty much switched my gambling focus to daily fantasy sports, and I was really enjoying that and really not enjoying when I was playing poker. And I think anybody who plays long enough is willing to admit times when they're just simply not feeling poker. They're not enjoying it very much. I'm sure there's rare exceptions to that, but most guys go through spells where they're just like, I'm getting crushed all the time. I don't feel good about this. Like, I'm not even liking being here. And that was kind of the mindset I was at when I arrived in Australia. And I was like, I haven't seen so many of these people in 6 years. I just want to hang out and catch up. I played a few prelims, busted out of those, and then I'm standing in line to register the main event, and I had kept half of myself in the tournament and sold half of myself at 1.2 to Timex, to Mike McDonald. And I dropped a 5K chip out of my pocket. And I was like, damn it, man. Like, all I do is lose. And, like, I don't even want to play this damn tournament.
You're standing in line to register.
Yeah.
You got 2 5K chips in your pocket. You look down and one's gone.
I know what I did. I took my phone out of my pocket, and I've seen this happen with chips before. I have a case, and it'll get a little just sort of caught in the case and just sort of flick out of the pocket. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened, and somebody picked up the chip. And I tried to get security to find it, and they couldn't find it. And I was like, damn it, man. Like, all I ever do is lose. Like, I can't even register a tournament right without throwing $5,000 in a trash can. Like, I don't even feel like playing anymore. Like, I don't think I'm going to play good, patient poker when I'm tilted off my head and I don't even want to be playing poker in the first place.
I'm tilted just listening to the story about it. You know what I mean? I can't imagine playing cards after losing that.
Yeah, so I was just like, man, screw this, I'm leaving. And I just walked out of the casino. And Timex messaged me and was like, hey, look, you know, I know you're frustrated right now, but if you feel like playing poker later and you just want a free roll, like, we could just extrapolate the markup that I sold you at to a free roll, and that would work out to you getting 17% of yourself. I was like, I don't know, man. I'll think about it and I'll go about my day. And that's what I did. And then at like 9 p.m. I freed up and I was like, I don't really have anything to do right now. Like, there's a couple of hours left in play. Timex is willing to give me a free roll. I could just waste some of his money and not feel bad about it. Like, anytime I was just like approaching the tournament, I was like, anytime it's a close spot, I could just gamble it up because who gives a shit? It's a free roll, baby. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, let's go, Timex. I'll take your free roll. Yeah. And the rest. Is...
It says a lot about your relationship with him that he trusts you to play in a 10K tournament. Mentally, a few hours after dealing with a 5K blunder.
Yeah. I think he probably thought that this is one of the best value tournaments of the year, and that if Tony doesn't, like, torch his chips immediately... I mean, I don't know. I'm just not a guy who torches stacks very much. Like, it's probably once you have a mental reset after the initial annoyance with what happened, you're probably more or less back to normal, and it's like, man, here's a good chance to get a lot of a decent player in this tournament who will probably play everything as normal after a couple of hours or something. Yeah. And that's just like I ended up sitting down and like I didn't even play any wild hands. I just had some like good hands and I finished the night with more than I started, and by day 2 I was like, oh yeah, we're playing a normal tournament. Like whatever, and
forget that 5K.
Yeah, forget that 5K.
You end up finishing second to Ari Engel. Yeah. Make $700,000.
Yes.
Well, Timex made a lot of money.
He made over 500,000 of it.
Yeah.
The way I chose to look at all of that in the broader sense was, if you had told me prior to going to Australia, you're going to get second in a big tournament and you're going to go home 6 figures richer than you left with, how would you feel about that? And I'd be like, yeah, sweet. And so that was kind of how I left Australia feeling. I was like, wow, what a crazy story. What an absurd sequence of events. And of course this happened to Timex of all people. Yeah. But
the kid who was 17 years old suddenly was a millionaire and then started backing people.
Also, he hadn't bought a piece of me in maybe like 2 years. It was just like this very random occurrence because we were both in the Philippines prior to this, and we were hanging out at the pool, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to play the Aussie Millions main event. I'm not feeling poker right now, but if you want a piece, I'll sell it to you at a reasonable rate. And he's like, all right, cool.
Oh, man. Mike McDonald. Yeah. Crazy. All right, so after that, though, you're off and running at the World Series of Poker, and you win a bracelet for $339,000.
Yeah, so after the Aussie Millions, it was kind of like the whole running deep in the Aussie Millions tournament and running good in that tournament just reminded me of how much I enjoy playing poker tournaments when they go well. Like, when you're not just losing all the time, it really is super fun. Just getting deep in a poker tournament, watching how everybody behaves and reacts to the pressure. And also around that time, PartyPoker wanted me to just kind of amp up the amount of live poker I was playing and come to a bunch more of their events, and WPT had me doing kind of similar stuff, and I was like, well, shit, man, let's just play a whole bunch of poker. DFS is getting tougher, and I had a really good run leading up to the World Series. I showed up kind of late, and that was totally fine, and I played like 6 events and just slammed a huge field 1K. Mm-hmm. And it was there really wasn't much of a story to that tournament. I just sort of like won pretty much every important pod that I played, won the major pre-flop confrontations that I had to win, card racked really hard when I got heads up. Like, it was just great.
But now you have a bracelet.
Yes, I do. I have a bracelet somewhere.
Where does it live? You mentioned you're homeless. You don't have a permanent residence. You said you have a bag of clothes at your parents' house, and that's about it.
And at Dan Smith's apartment. I have a couple of suits, and I think a bracelet hanging out somewhere in Dan Smith's apartment.
So your bracelet's in Dan Smith's place?
I think so.
You know he's moving.
I put the bracelet and some clothes and the suits on top of a bed at Dan's old apartment, and asked if the people doing the moving could move it to the new apartment, and I have not really peeked around in his new place to see whether it got there.
So I'm guessing the bracelet doesn't complete your suit ensemble most nights.
Oh yeah, I've never actually worn the bracelet. I may have put it on after I won it, but I don't think I would. It's not. I'm not trying to hate on people who wear bracelets around or anything. It's just not for me. I don't want to call attention to the fact.
I think I'd wear mine in the shower, and that's it if I had one.
Exactly.
Just for me, it's a alone time bracelet.
Yeah, alone bracelet time.
You had a quote that I really liked. You said, "I'm really happy that I've gotten to have the experience of running incredibly hot for a while, I'm also happy that I'm not results-oriented and don't have some confirmation bias about why it happened.
Yeah.
These people blame their diet, blah, blah, blah. I didn't change anything about my life or work on my game. I just ran better. In my opinion, that's about 99% of the reason anybody has a hot streak. You still believe that?
Yeah, I do. Because, like I said, in the year prior to that like 6-month incredible hot streak, like I wasn't thinking about poker. I wasn't working on it. I wasn't asking many questions to my friends. I wasn't like running pio solvers. I wasn't doing anything. And then I had the best 6 months of my 10-ish year career. So, you know, I do think, obviously, I'm not trying to dismiss the amount of skill that is in poker. There's an enormous amount of skill in poker. But, like, on any given sample of, 6 months worth of tournaments that any human can play, or, like, I don't know, if you try to play tournaments every day or something, you maybe get 200 in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a big enough sample to draw any like meaningful conclusions. If somebody crushes over the course of 6 months, they just like ran the best. They're probably a good player too, but they just like ran the best.
Yeah.
And it's a little unsettling to think about and realize just how much we don't control in our results and outcomes in poker. But luck just plays an enormous factor. And when you go on one of these like heaters, yeah, it's also, I think, a result of the hard work you put in on your game, but you can't ever predict when that heater is going to come because it's simply not in your control.
Yeah. But a bad player can't really go on a heater.
Bad players can go on heaters.
Like a Fedor Holtz, like a Dan Coleman.
Probably not that caliber of heater. No, but bad players have gone on heaters where maybe they've strung together a few like big tournament results in big field tournaments over, I don't know, a 6-month span or something.
Yeah.
A year, something like that. Where basically a guy kind of blows up on the scene, not in a huge way like a Dan Coleman or a Fedor Holtz, but someone just has like really excellent, meaningful results for a year or something. But if you were to actually look at their play, you'd be like, man, I don't know if this guy's even a winning player.
Mm-hmm. I sometimes see it in personalities, especially on WPT when you see people get hot for a season or two. Sometimes somebody's personality will just do really well at the table until people get used to them. Do you feel that at all?
I'm not really sure I understand.
I feel like some people are just harder to figure out right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they're solved, they don't adjust. I can't name names.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but I would think there are definitely some guys where as it became more common for us to do online streams and reveal every hole card of the way people played, there were some guys that people were like, yo, this dude's playing way too many hands, this guy's bluffing way too much, or the opposite, like this guy never like plays a big pot without the nuts. This guy like never bluffs in a meaningful spot, and if word gets out on you and you don't really adjust, then yeah, that's gonna hurt your bottom line.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you're obviously taking over the big seat with Mike, and you and Vince are gonna be. Are you guys gonna change the formula at all, or?
Not that I know of. I think the structure and the formula of the show for the time being remains the same, and that it's mostly about the chemistry and rapport that Vince and I can develop.
Yeah. And, well, obviously you have a good head start on that. Do you have a catchphrase picked out? Because Mike obviously had the famous catchphrase.
Right. My guess is that Mike's catchphrases weren't intentional. They were, like, something he yelled out in the moment, and then everyone's like, oh, we love that! So I think that I should not try and force a catchphrase. I should just say things that naturally occur to me, and if one of them has a catchphrase-like quality, maybe I can adopt it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking specifically of may all your cards be live and your pots be monsters.
Right.
I can't imagine.
That's a sign-off kind of catchphrase. I don't know, maybe I should come up with a sign-off.
Do you have a sign-off?
Stay classy, San Diego.
Yeah, stay classy, San Diego.
Something along those lines.
You might get sued for that one.
Right, you can't use that, but I haven't thought over a sign-off line, but maybe that's a discussion to have with the producers. Because
maybe you may
be absolutely right that the show needs a sign-off line.
You have to have some kind of toast, right, at the end of the...
I guess so.
Some champagne toast. All right, we got some rapid-fire questions for you. What's the worst bad beat that you ever put on anybody?
The worst emotional bad beat I ever put on somebody was 10-handed in the WPT Montreal that I final tabled in 2016. And some guy opened on like the hijack, and I had 27 blinds or something in the small and just ripped all in with pocket nines, and he called with aces, and the board ran out clean to the river, and I just drilled him for like 90% of his chips. And I could tell this is one of these guys that like may have satellited into this tournament. He doesn't play like a ton of big tournaments, but like he's kind of up and coming in poker. He's working on it, and this means so much to him. And this pot is so important, 10-handed right before the final table, and I just ripped his heart out with that 9 on the river. Like he was so sad about it, and that to me was like the worst one I ever did to somebody.
That's the closest you came to inducing tears.
Like, yeah, I'm sure statistically I put a much worse beat on somebody than some random 2-outer, but like the impact of it, that's the worst one.
Yeah, right on the final table bubble.
Yeah,
he's gonna have a big stack.
Safe until the river. Like, oh man,
crippled. Did he go out in 10?
He sure did. He got 2-outed in one more pot right after that in the same fashion.
Couldn't even ladder up.
So brutal.
Well, I'm glad it worked out for you, though.
Yeah, sweet for me.
Can you tell us about the biggest pot you've ever won or lost?
Biggest cash game pot I ever won, I think, was in either a 10-20 or 20-40 no limit game where I raised, I want to say, like, Queen 10 suited. I raised Jack 9 of clubs, and a dude called with pocket 10s, and it came like Queen 10 8 all clubs. And he was like a guy who also tended to put too much money in. So that was like a 20 or 24K pot or something like that. I never played really huge cash games, so that was probably the biggest one. But it was nice because I had all of it, and I wasn't backed in the game or anything.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about being a poker pro? Or actually, you know what? Do you even consider yourself a poker pro right now?
At this moment in time, no, I'm not a poker pro. I have a career with the World Poker Tour, and I would say I'm a presenter and a host now. Mm-hmm. But for a long time, I was definitely a poker pro. And, when I'm off duty from the WPT, I live like a poker pro, and I still have a poker pro's brain in my head. And my favorite aspect of that lifestyle is just, like, go where you want, do when you want. Like, besides having the responsibilities of my job, like, I don't ever have to play if I don't want to. I don't ever have to go anywhere I don't want to. I don't have to listen to anything from anyone, Like, that's the appeal of the poker life, is the autonomy.
And you don't have to touch feet or make sandwiches.
Nah, none of that. None of that.
You've obviously rolled with some crews that have been known for, prop bets and some degenning. What's your favorite degen story?
My favorite degen story was the time we had Ashton Griffin run home 15 miles after they had golfed 36 holes in like the Vegas summer heat, and then they went and got a huge sushi meal, and then they went to get frozen yogurt, and Ashton ordered this massive thing of frozen yogurt, and then as he was eating it, they discussed the terms of this prop bet, wherein he would have to run home from the frozen yogurt place to our house, which was 15 miles in the evening Vegas heat.
Well, the sun doesn't go down till 9 here, so it's still hot.
Yeah, and he was not allowed to use the bathroom before leaving, and he had to complete it in 3 hours or something. And they were at the frozen yogurt place when they called home, and we were all playing in line, and they're like, Ashton's gonna run home 15 miles after all this shit.
Wait.
You want to get into this bet? And so I was like, oh yeah. And a whole bunch of us collectively bet 20 to 25K against him. And he arrived home with 20, 30 minutes to spare, no problem.
Oh,
he threw up on the side of the road an hour in, but after that, he was good to go. He was chilling. He crushed us.
Isn't that 12 minutes a mile?
Something like that. It might have been 2 hours 20. It was. Yeah. He's a freak.
Oh no, that guy is.
He's a freak.
Yeah, he's the one who won the big
treadmill bet. Yeah, he's that guy. That
you
was.
You could also
prelude.
hear Chewy tell a story on a podcast I did with him about him running up the side of a mountain, basically. For money.
Yep. Exactly.
Oh, you know that one too?
I was at home when they came. They came back and told us that story as well.
Man.
Yeah, he was good for that stuff.
Well, good for you, Ashton. You're making money with those legs. What is your favorite tournament destination? Don't feel pressure to pick a WPT stop.
Well, okay.
Anywhere you want in the world. For whatever reason you want in the world.
Assuming good weather, though, I will say Montreal. Playground Poker Club is such a sick spot to play poker. It's such a well-run room. Yeah. Montreal is such a fun city. And it's also just, it's closer. Obviously, I have an affinity for the Aussie Millions after the results I've had there and the history I have there. But, man, having to travel 20 hours to get down there is just brutal. Whereas when I go to Montreal, I take a nap on a plane and I'm there. And especially, man, when the weather is nice there, that is an incredible city. But it just has a lot going for it. The people who live there are really cool. It's an awesome poker room. Our tournaments have always done super well there. And right now, that's like my favorite place to go play.
Card Player Poker Tour coming to the World Cup of Cards at Playground Poker Club.
Yeah.
Little plug for our tour. Who's the best poker player that we've never heard of? Or that doesn't get his or her proper attention?
Yeah, I just don't know. That's a great question to ask Mike McDonald. He would have an awesome answer for that. But like, I have no idea.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What are you listening to at the table if you got headphones on?
I don't have headphones on at the table. I think it's kind of important for my job that I stay a social participant in the game. So I don't necessarily think I should be talking the entire time at the table, especially if there are pros at the table. They probably don't want that. But I don't wear headphones, and I don't want it to feel like I'm ever in a mood to don't speak to me. Like I think part of my job is being willing to engage people whenever.
Do you feel like the pressure to fill Mike's ambassador role?
I don't think it's a pressure, really. It's pretty natural for me to try and make poker a welcoming environment for people. I've always felt that, like, casual poker players are the customers of the professional poker player in many ways. So, like, please treat your customers well. Please just treat people in general well. So, I like a game that just kind of moves smoothly, that the people get along at, that people feel comfortable at. I don't feel like I'm under a lot of pressure to fill Mike's role as an ambassador. It feels natural to me.
You said you came up before the Moneymaker boom, but was there like a particular player that you looked up to back then? And did you ever get to play a pot with him?
Well, I did meet Mike very early in my poker career at my first ever Aussie Millions, and I looked up to him the way a lot of guys did, because he was the face of poker in the United States. And I liked Marcel Lusk for his style, like he was the only well-known poker player who would suit up, so to say, on a regular basis, and he always looked very, just very stylish, really. He also was a guy who seems to be always in pretty good spirits at the table, like sort of a positive, talkative person. I don't think we've ever seen some clip of, Marcel losing a hand and like melting down at somebody or being, oh, this bullshit game or anything. Like I like that he and Mike both seem to sell poker in such a positive way, or portray poker in such a positive way. Yeah. Yeah.
Marcel has also got a CD. I don't know if you ever heard it.
I don't think that I have. No.
Check out Marcel Lusk, recording artist. It'll blow your mind. What would you be doing if you weren't a poker player? What do you think?
It's hard to imagine a life in which I wasn't a professional poker player because I started so young and never really lapsed from it. But I was always attracted to risk, as we mentioned before. I thought when I was younger maybe I would be a stockbroker. That seemed like kind of a cool life to me. Yeah, it's just really difficult to say. I just found it too young. There wasn't something else that I felt the calling for. I really like writing, and I really like working in television and speaking on camera. It makes me feel comfortable and engaged.
If poker went away tomorrow,
sure. If poker went away tomorrow, then I would just pursue a career in television.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some kind of broadcasting.
Some kind of broadcasting. I really like working with people, working with cameras, being creative, writing content. And it's not something that ever makes me feel nervous the way cameras make most people feel nervous. I'm like, cool, we got a camera. We can do this as many times as we want until it's perfect.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of stuff.
We end the podcast the same way every time with a question from the random question generator. Your question is, what was the last gift that you received? This is a weird one for you because you don't own anything.
The last gift I received was a tie.
A tie?
Yeah.
Who was it from? Was it a special tie?
From a young woman, yeah, a special tie. I haven't used it yet. I got it pretty recently, so I need to find an event. I think probably that charity event in New York. I'll probably wear this tie because it's a little bit darker. It almost has like a black tie look to it. So I think that'll be a good occasion for it.
You mentioned earlier before we started recording that you're not one for possessions anymore. Right. Is there anything you have your eye on though? I mean, I know you're living out of suitcases, but
Well, I might get an apartment for my first time in 2 years.
Yeah, so you're going to settle down?
I think I'm going to move to Los Angeles. It seems like a good idea with this promotion and needing to spend more time in our recording studio. So an apartment is kind of a thing. That's tied down for sure. I dread the idea of having to buy things to put in the apartment. That is the least appealing aspect to this whole process.
You got to sit somewhere.
Yeah, you got to sit somewhere. So, I don't know. I need a bed and a couch, and probably a screen, and then some stuff for the kitchen, I guess.
Hangers for the suits.
And hangers for the suits.
Yeah, they don't come like they do in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, that's it. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for taking the time out, and I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, no problem.
With your broadcast career and at the tables.
Yeah, thank you, Julio.
That's the show. Thanks again to Tony. You can find him on Twitter at Bond_18 and watch him on the World Poker Tour airing Sundays and Wednesdays on FSN. Thanks again for listening. If you like what you heard, do us a favor and please rate, review, and subscribe. Attention American poker players. Do you want to legally cash out your poker winnings to PayPal? Then head to globalpoker.com and see why it's the fastest growing site for US players. That's globalpoker.com.